What I love about rewatching any show is how many hidden details you can pick up compared to watching it the first time, as now you already know the story, so you can focus on other aspects of it, especially a show like Good Omens, that is filled with Easter eggs and details the creators want us to find. So today, I want to talk about one item we were introduced to in Season 2 that served as a clue for the main plot of the season, but I would argue it means something more in the grand scheme. Why is that, you might ask yourself, although you probably already know because of the title of this video? Grab a cup of hot cocoa and let me tell you all about it. The main plot of Season 2 centers around Gabriel, who mysteriously lost his memory and is being searched by both heaven and hell, so Aziraphale and Crowley decide to understand what happened to the Archangel. Halfway through episode 1, we are in heaven, where Muriel finds a matchbox which was used by Gabriel to store something. On the matchbox is a quote, "Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out." When I first saw that, I thought to myself, that's a cool thing to add on a matchbox. Get it? Sparks of fire? Funny. But while watching the show, I noticed one thing. Every time the matchbox is shown to us, the quote is clearly visible. Now, this might just be the fact that the matchbox was turned that way. This prop is a detail in a show that was placed in a specific way, and to give you a clear view of something in visual media is not unintentional. Could this matchbox give us a clue for what will happen next? I'm very intrigued by this item. Therefore, I want to make an overview of things I gathered so far that connect to the matchbox. And I won't make any specific predictions about Season 3 plot-wise, but more look at possible themes of the next season. I would love to hear your thoughts on it and theories in the comments, as I'm also just trying to survive until we can all watch the next season. So let's put on our detective hats and investigate. The question we will start with is, how can we connect the themes of ineffability, destruction, and resurrection to make sense of the next season? And I believe the answer lies on the side of Gabriel's matchbox. First, let's see where the quote comes from. As seen on the matchbox, the quote originates from the book of Job, which comes from the Old Testament and is sometimes referred to as one of the biblical books of wisdom. The main theme of the story is the question of suffering, as why do the righteous suffer? And therefore, is God truly wise and just? The whole story is made as a sort of a dialogue between Job and his friends, and ends up with Job talking to God. You might already know bits and pieces of it, as the whole second episode of the season was a Good Omens retelling of this particular biblical story. That episode was important for many reasons. It is the first chronologically that shows us to trust Crowley and Aziraphale start building after realizing both are quite separate from their offices, heaven and hell, and essentially create a mutual understanding of each other's situations. Another reason is the story of Job itself, and you can see how its main theme is spread out throughout the entire Good Omens universe, as Neil Gaiman already confirmed. There is a joke in the show about how some things are ineffable, but Job Minisode looks at it from a more serious lens. To come back to the story, both in the Bible and in the show, Job talks to God after asking to explain why Job had to suffer, and in both cases, he doesn't really get an answer. God goes on and on about all the creations of the universe, and how Job could never control nor understand any of it. But that is an answer in and of itself if we think about it. To sum it up, God is ineffable. The problem of perspective comes into play, and through the story the point is to show how we as humans don't have as big of understanding of the world as we think we do. Therefore, it is wrong for us to assume why suffering happens and how justice should be carried out. That's why, in the end, Job never learned why he suffered. And in Good Omens, it is not only humans that don't have a grasp of God's plan, but even those who we think do, don't. Aziraphale especially questions the decision to kill all of Job's goats and children and does not believe it was what God wanted, and we see how this distances him from the way heaven operates. The idea of good and bad is important in Good Omens. You can take any episode, especially in Season 2, and see how it talks about it. The story of Job looks at why the righteous suffer, and the Scotland episode looks at why are not all born on equal footing. And all of those are always connected to Crowley and Aziraphale's understanding of good and evil, as they are the most observant and humane from both angels and demons. Coming back to the matchbox, this quote specifically is referring to one of God's creations, Leviathan. Leviathan is known in the Bible as a symbol of disorder and danger, along with another creature called Behemoth. Behemoth? I don't know how to pronounce it. In God's speech to Job, Leviathan is described as something only God can deal with. Further proof of what I mentioned about understanding and perspective. I quote, "No one is fierce enough to rouse it. Who then is able to stand against me?" Leviathan, as what it represents, will be crucial in the story unfolding. From one of the final scenes from Season 1, Crowley mentions as they sit on a bench that he believes the final battle will be humanity versus heaven and hell. Both sides are prone to destruction, eager to ruin each other, and that is essentially what the two main characters are against. Both of them love humanity and want to preserve it, but unfortunately we saw this separate them in the final few minutes of Season 2. Aziraphale wishes to stop heaven's agenda by changing it, but we already know it won't come easy. Heaven, as it is now, is not looking for a change, same as hell, and both continue to hope for the ultimate destruction of Earth. There is a hint to this idea of destruction already already in Season 2, specifically in bonus content of Episode 6, where we see a picture of destroyed land surrounding Aziraphale's bookshop, and we know Neil wanted to incorporate it into the season, as he said it would tie nicely with his ideas, which definitely leaves us with more questions. Once again, Leviathan is destruction, chaos, something unbeatable, something only God can deal with. The first instance of such destruction was in Season 1 with their plan of Armageddon, and judging from what Metatron told Aziraphale before they entered the elevator, they have further great plans, specifically related to the Second Coming. At this point, I was confused a bit with the difference between these two, since both Armageddon Part 2 and the Second Coming were mentioned in Season 2, so I was not sure if the show used those two synonymously or not. The Second Coming refers to, you guessed it, the next coming of Jesus. But here's where it gets tricky. Let me tell you, I did not think I would be researching the Bible so much when I started this channel, but here we are. Depending on where you're looking for information, you will see the Second Coming meaning the Last Judgment, which is a day of, again, you guessed it, the Last Judgment of everyone on Earth. And to make it even more complicated, those two terms are also used to describe Armageddon. In all three cases, the end result is the destruction of everything we know to be true. In Christianity specifically, it is the day when the dead will be resurrected, the saved and the damned will be separated, and everyone's souls will be judged. Does that remind you of something? I quote, "There will come a tempest, and darkness, and great storms, and the dead will leave their graves and walk the earth once more, and there will be great lamentations. Every day it's getting closer." Two things I want to say about this. Well, actually three. First, I just want to say how well the show integrated this into the plot of Season 2. We could already assume how this quote from Gabriel refers to something that will happen in the future. The season, as I said, followed the missing of Gabriel's memory, and we kind of understand in the end why he lost it, but not everything is answered. For example, what does he mean by something terrible? As Neil Gaiman said, Season 2 was like a bridge between Season 1 and 3, and the next season should follow an idea both him and Terry Pratchett had for a sequel of the book. So, in essence, this season was important to lay the foundation of what will happen. Next, we need to focus on two motives from Gabriel's prophecy, or as he calls it, the something terrible. I mentioned a couple of times the idea of resurrection, and boy did the show know how to hint at it. We got zombies, we got the resurrectionist from the Scotland episode, which was also the name of the pub, we got the return of all earthly goods to Job, and finally the way miracles are measured in Lazarus, who was a person resurrected by Jesus. And coming back to what we established the Second Coming is, both destruction and resurrection are part of it. Interesting to mention, just to close this off, in Season 1 the destruction was wished to be carried out through the Antichrist, but luckily for humanity it failed. The plan they hoped to carry out was called the Armageddon, and now Metatron mentioned another plan, the Second Coming, and we know the theme of opposites is very important in the show. I'm not saying we will get Jesus in Season 3, but wouldn't that be fun to watch? And lastly, this is more like a fun observation, but Gabriel said every day it's getting closer. This is a cute reference to Buddy Holly's song, which was the clue in this season for Beelzebub and Gabriel, but there is something more to it. If you read the script book for Season 1, you probably noticed how Neil Gaiman really wanted to incorporate this song a long time ago into the show, and the way we got it is a bit different than what was intended. So will this song appear again in Season 3? I guess we have to wait and see. And that's the end of my TED Talk. We have gone through the three main themes of the show, specifically in Season 2, that will be crucial to address in Season 3: ineffability, destruction, and resurrection. There is one more left, and that is the theme of opposite sides. But I will leave that one for some other time to discuss, as there is already a lot of talk about it, and I only want to focus on the ones I was able to track down just from the Matchbox quote. A lot of what I mentioned is still just thoughts and ideas that we will be able to fully connect when the next season comes. I won't say if, but when. Positive affirmations. There are probably a lot of things I had in my notes but forgot to mention, and honestly, even if I did say everything I wanted to, the show is so filled with tiny details that will come into play later that it's just impossible to focus on everything at once. But that is the beauty of the show. One of the reasons it is so enjoyable is because the creators put so much love into making this story and adapting it by paying attention to everything, and people like seeing such devotion. Final question we all still have is, what will happen in Season 3? Well, to us at least for now, that's ineffable. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you tell me all of your theories in the comments, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!